Oh, hi y'all, it's Erin. Thanks for joining today. We're going to go ahead and get started. I factored an hour for this, but I think that we might get through sooner than that. Kind of just depends on if y'all have any questions. Speaking of questions, I think that it makes sense to just stop me if you have a question instead of waiting until the end, because you might forget and we're going to cover a whole bunch of random things. All of this is either new stuff in the P&P that I've sent emails out, but we haven't really had a training about, or especially for the nutrition part, it's just review, but we haven't had a training in a while, and these were some of the things that I was seeing in some of the provider on-site, so just it's a reminder of what's in the P&P already. So we are recording this, and you can listen and watch it at a later date if you are so inclined. But let's go ahead and get started, and then just stop me if you have questions. All right. So here's our agenda. This first part is going to be information for all the providers, and then if you are not a nutrition provider, you can get off after this part's over, and if you are a nutrition provider, just stay on the line and we'll talk about things that are specific to y'all. So here's the biggest, newest, ugliest thing that everybody is going to have to do beginning January 1st. So this is the CAPS check. This has to do with the Adult Protective Services. It begins January 1. It is not retroactive, so you do not have to do CAPS background checks for any current employees, although the statute is silent on it, so you can if you want, but it's not required. It also does not apply to volunteers, and they specifically ask that you do not do the CAPS check for volunteers. This does not take the place of the CBI background check, which you are required to do. That also, it does include volunteers, anyone who has one-on-one contact. This is in addition to the CBI background check. That's not changing. You still have to do a CBI background check. This is in addition to. The purpose of it is there will be this database that actually started on July 1st, that if anybody, an employee, has been substantiated in an APS case of, and there's a list, I won't read it out loud, of neglect, abuse, exploitation, they will show up in this database. What is a little difficult for us if we are searching for new employees hired after January 1st is that it doesn't really give you information about what it was, when it occurred. It doesn't give you a whole lot of information. It just says this person has been substantiated in a case. Can we click on that link? Actually, I can probably do that. Okay. So I put a link here. This is the most up-to-date CAPS check information, and this is everything where you will go to complete a CAPS background check, where you will go to get information, where you will go to register, which I'll talk about in just one second. The fees, all of this information is here on this Colorado CDHS website. So I'll go just do that. You have to, at beginning January 1st, you have to do this. You have to do it before, but you don't have to. The big thing for the check is it's exciting how you're going to go through a CAPS background check. There's what direct contact is, what direct care is. So the law, the statute stipulates that you have to care, that they don't really define. So you decide,
let me try somebody if we're having some feedback issues.
Okay, y'all. So I'm going to keep talking. If you have any issues hearing this, send a chat to Amanda through the webinar function, and that's how you can ask questions too. Okay. All right, so I was talking about the difference between direct contact and direct care. The statute requires people, employees hired after January 1st who provide direct care to have the CAPS background check. So it's fairly nebulous. They did it on purpose. The main thing that you have to think about is you define what is direct care, you make a policy about it, and then you apply that across the board. So we were having a discussion at the State Union on Aging meeting on Monday. Some people are saying if you have any kind of contact, whether or not you actually physically touch or assist an older adult, if you're just sitting at the front desk, we consider that direct care. Everybody's getting a CAP background check. They write that in their policies. They apply that to any new employees or any new hires. We have other people saying, well, and we consider that direct contact. If we do door-through-door transportation, we'll consider that direct care and we'll require a CAPS background check. So the definition is up to you. Decide how you want to define direct care, put it in policy, and apply it across the board. In the same way that you can hire someone prior to receiving the results from the CAP background check, you can hire regardless of the results of the CAP background check. So you can have somebody who is substantiated in some kind of elder abuse and still choose to hire them. Again, you should probably have that in policy about what you will do if there is a substantiated finding when you do the CAPS background check. Before you search for somebody in the CAPS background, you have to have a signed copy of consent form from them. This link is found on that same website. This link here will take you directly to it. This is the authorization form that you have to have filled out. You don't have to send this to anyone. I don't need to see it. The state doesn't need to see it. You need to have this in the person's HR file, employee file, or some file that you keep internally if your HR department is outside of your office. And the SUA or the AAA can request to see it. It costs currently, they do have it written in statute that they can change the cost of how much it is for the CAPS background check. Currently it's $15.50, and then you can do it via credit card, which is an additional $1 transaction fee, or you can do it via check, and then it would just be $15.50. So what I heard loud and clear from my training on Monday about this is that although you don't have to start doing this for new employees until January 1st, there is a step that they would like you to complete right now, before January 1st, and that is registering your agency. This link will take you to the page where you can register your agency. You have to be registered before you try and do a CAPS background check, and if you wait to register and then need to do a CAPS background check, it can delay being able to get the background check. Amanda did it for us yesterday, and it was, an hour, I guess, in between when she put in the information and then I got the email that said, you're registered. They're actually having human beings doing the registration because you have to be an entity in the state of Colorado that would have a reason to do a CAPS background check, so they have to check to make sure that you're legit. Because if I work for Best Buy and I sign up to do CAPS background check, they're going to deny my registration. But they're having a human being actually check to make sure that all the people, entities registering are legitimate. So that's why there could be a delay between when you request the registration and when you actually receive registration information. And that's all I remember what I was going to say about that. Let me go back. just so you know, so you're prepared when you go to register, that's the information that you are going to have to enter to be able for them to process your CAPS registration. The agency license number from CDPHE, if you don't have that, you don't have that and you don't need it. But there are some agencies that will have a license number from CDPHE. So don't worry if you get in there and you're like, I don't have that. The one thing that most people do get in there and don't necessarily have right offhand is your Colorado tax ID number. It does time out. If you start the process and then you go to find your tax ID number, don't come back for a couple hours, it will have timed out and you'll have to restart it. So that's your information that you should just go ahead and have on hand when you go to register. But it only took you, what, 10 minutes to do it? Yeah. So it's not too bad. The big thing to take away from this is do it now. Don't wait until you have an employee who needs a background check. Wait, let me go back one. Oopsie, can I go backwards? No. The one thing about the CAPS background check that I did not talk about is it is potentially especially if you're in a county, so for example, Pitkin County, Eagle County, your APS program has probably already gone in and registered. You can choose to go in and register as a part of Eagle County, or you can go in and register as Eagle County Public Health and Environment. So that may be a discussion you need to have internally if you are set up with a structure where you already have APS department within your county. Just figure out if you are doing your own or if you're going to go through the registration, the agency that's already been set up. It's another reason to kind of start looking into this now instead of waiting until you have a new employee. Okay, thank you. The other new addition to the P&P is the wait list, which isn't new, but the way that the P&P now requires uniform wait lists and services unavailable tracking, which is new. So this happened a few months ago. It's added to the policy and procedures manual, and I would recommend that you go to the P&P and read it. There's about a page and a half about it. I didn't include all the information. This is just going to be your broad overview. So one thing that I had not clarified when I sent the email out about this a couple months ago is that wait lists are only for new clients if you have reached your capacity. So let's say you have 20 home delivered meals and you're talking about trying to prioritize people who are currently receiving those home delivered meals. At this point, that is not what you're doing. You are only creating wait lists how you only have enough funding for 20 home delivered meals. Your 21st person comes in and asks you for new home delivered meals. It's at that point that wait list starts for that one person, and that's where that prioritization tool that we had sent out, you can do your own prioritization tool. It does have to be approved by the State Unit on Aging. So that's why we sent out what we're using and what has been approved by the state. But you do have the flexibility to do your own. So those wait lists and the prioritization tool are only for when you've hit that capacity and you've gone over. There was some discussion at the SUA meeting on Monday that led me to believe that this might be a little bit more fluid than it currently looks. This is a new requirement that actually it's from the state legislature because we continue to ask for more state funding for senior services, and they continue to give us requests for more data to prove that we actually need it. So we said, hey, we've got all these people on wait lists. We need more money to try and get people off the wait list. So they said, right, show us your wait list now. So we are having a uniform wait list tracking system and prioritization tool that we have to use statewide. So it did sound like it might change a little bit. You'll see that in the policy and procedures. There will be a lot of communication about that. So don't be concerned, but this is the way that it looks right now. So there is a difference between a wait list and services unavailable. It is not You would not put someone on a wait list if they will get the service within a 2-week period. So let's say they want home delivered meals. You say, I can't get you on this week, but starting next week I can. That's fine. That would not be a wait list. That would be if somebody from Garfield County says, I want home delivered meals, and you say, I'm sorry, I'm in Eagle or I'm in Pitkin. We don't serve Garfield County. That wouldn't be a wait list. That would be a service unavailable. If the client is already receiving a service but wants a higher level of service, nobody here is providing homemaker through our dollars, but that would be a good example of, I'm getting 6 hours a month of homemaker. I need 10 hours. We can't provide that. That would be a service is unavailable, not a wait list. And then what we'll probably see the most in transportation is if a client needs a service on a certain date, but that service isn't available. So you provide transportation on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They want to ride on Thursday. You can't give it to them on that date. So that would be a service is unavailable, not a wait list. You will enter in all of that. Oh, hold on. Do we have a question? We had to put you all on, and now I'm not able to.
What if the service won't be able to begin for 1 to 2 months, as in more than a 2-week period?
And you'd put that person would be on a wait list. So it has to be within a 2-week period that you can deliver that service for it to be a services unavailable versus a wait list. If you can still provide that service, but it's more than 2 weeks, that is a wait list. And then you take them off of the wait list when in 1 to 2 months you are able to provide that service. That's why, and this is in the P&P, I didn't put it on here because it's a lot of information, but that's why there are very specific things that you have on your wait list, the person's name, their contact information. One of them is the day that they went on the wait list, so we have an idea of how many days people are on the wait list. So you've got the day the person went on the wait list, the day they went off, and then you've got the total numbers they were on the wait list. Any more questions?
I think that's it. I'm going to give this a try and see if this is Carly's phone, just to see if that clears that up. Is that you, Carly?
Yes.
Oh, look at me go.
Did that answer your question, Carly?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So we have everybody on mute just so it's clear. If you have a question, put your question in the chat box and we can approach it that way. And just anytime you have a question. The next slide is going to show you what it looks like when you do your monthly reimbursement. That's where you're going to put all of this information of the wait list and the services unavailable. Also in the P&P it specifies, you'll see on the right-hand side, there's where you enter in the unable to serve, and that to the right of that is the no wait list data available. It's going to default to no wait list. If you do have a wait list, you are going to uncheck that box, and that's where you're going to be able to put in those units. Unable to serve, the way you track it is actually by unduplicated client. So if you don't track it by the number of times somebody requested home delivered meals, let's say in a month you had 10 different phone calls and there were 10 times that you said, oh, we don't serve Garfield County, so that's 10 unable to serve. It could be, but you're not tracking the number of services, you're tracking the number of unduplicated people. So that one person might have called 5 times to request those home delivered meals in Garfield County. If that one person called 5 times, that's not 5 unable to serve, that's 1 unable to serve because it was the same person. So you're actually looking at the number of unduplicated persons as opposed to the number of times it was requested or the number of services it was requested. And it's as you can see from this slide, it's done by service. So you've got how many unable to serve under transportation, how many unable to serve under public information, how many unable to serve under case management. Any questions about waitlist, services unavailable? From my understanding, this information is being collected monthly from all the providers, including the AAA. We submit it when we do our reimbursement to the state. The state is collecting the data, and it will be given in an annual report to the state legislature. Okay. The other thing that I saw a lot on the provider on-sites was we're still using the old voluntary contribution language. This changed a couple of months ago. Everything used to say services cannot be denied due to a reluctance or inability to contribute. The state, although they wrote it, they don't like that language, so they changed it. So now it says in the P&P, services may not be denied to a consumer if the consumer does not contribute towards the cost of the service. The big words missing from that are reluctance and inability. You need to wipe the words reluctance and inability out of all of your material, off of your website, off of your donation letters, off of any signs in your senior centers or nutrition sites. Reluctance and inability needs to go away. It doesn't have to say exactly what it says in the P&P, services may not be denied. It just can't have the words reluctance and inability. You can say you have the opportunity to voluntarily contribute. That would be awesome. I mean, you're kind of given some flexibility on what it says. It doesn't have to be word for word. Just have to take out reluctance and inability. 2 reminders about voluntary contributions. There's not any one way that you have to offer that opportunity. You can do it verbally, although that's a little bit harder to prove that you did. But it does say in the P&P that you can make that opportunity verbal. It can be in letters. It can be in a form that you give them when they first register for the service. There are a lot of different options. You just have to give them an opportunity. And then this is very nuanced, and I've noticed in the policy and procedure manual, they use these 2 terms interchangeably, but there's actually a pretty big difference between contribution and donation, and we are specifically talking about voluntary contributions. The difference is that a contribution is, especially in this case, is going to be confidential, and it is not tax deductible. So what the nuance is that we are saying we are providing this service to you without a charge. That does not mean that this service is free for us to provide to you. So if you voluntarily contribute, you are contributing towards the true cost of delivering this service. A donation is saying that this may not have a cost for us to give you this service, so I'm just donating this amount of money. You're not contributing towards the cost of it. So it's nuanced, but the big thing here is that contributions are completely anonymous and not tax deductible. You can't write them thank you notes for it in the way that you could do all of those if you worked for the American Red Cross and somebody gave a donation, and we're going to put your name on a wall, and we're going to send you a thank you card, and we're going to send you information for a tax deduction. Any questions to type in? I don't see any in the chat box, so I'm going to keep moving forward. This is not new. There are 6-month reassessments that we have to do. For people on this call, reassessments really will be for case management and the home-delivered meals. The one big change that has happened in the past year is that if you did an assessment for a home-delivered meal or case management in August, then you would have to do that reassessment in January. It had to be exactly 6 months. The state has made it a little bit more flexible that you just have to do a 6-month reassessment within a 6-month period. So if you're doing reassessments, if your program requires 6-month reassessments, you have to do that assessment sometime between July and December, and again sometime between January and June. So it doesn't have to be 6 months exactly, it just has to be within that window. So theoretically, you could really go 11 months before doing a reassessment. It just has to be within that window. I want to remind you that we have a website, and I mention the policy and procedures so often. I do send out any updates when I receive those from the State Unit on Aging, the SUA. I send those out to you in an email, but I know if you're like me, that goes into a folder and I don't necessarily reference that email anymore. You can always go to our website. You can go to the alpineAAA.org, or you can go directly to the provider tab on this website. And we will always have the most up-to-date policy and procedure and the volume 10. So all of these are your provider forms that you might need to access. You've got your assessment forms, dental vision, all of your in-home transportation information in here. And then down here at the bottom, we've got the most up-to-date policy and procedure manual. So this is another way you can double check just to make sure that you're in compliance. Okay, that was it for my all providers. So unless you just really want to hear what's going on in nutrition world.
When must we start tracking waitlist services unavailable for a wait?
So you were supposed to start tracking wait list and services unavailable in September, October. So now, should have been doing that when I sent the email out about it when we finally got the approval, or not approval, when the mandate from the state and the policy and procedure manual was updated. So now.
And I'm not sure which line you're on. We haven't had any yet, so we're all good.
Great.
Excellent.
And we don't actually anticipate having a lot of providers with wait lists. We do anticipate people will have services unavailable. Okay, barring any more questions, and I can always go back if a question does come in. Unless you are a nutrition provider, you can get off the call and we'll move on to nutrition stuff.
Should I open up the line quick?
Sure.
I went ahead and unmuted anybody just in case there were more questions.
Okay, yeah, you can just let us know in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
All right, nutrition providers. I don't think that this is an issue. I'm pretty sure that everyone I've talked to, because we have 3 nutrition providers now, has this Certified Food and Safety Protection Manager certification taken care of. Congratulations. I imagine that that probably was not terribly fun. So thanks for going that extra step. This is to get us into compliance. I believe that this was a requirement from several years ago in the Colorado Code, but for whatever reason, it is just now a requirement beginning January 1st. So this has to do with the Colorado Retail Food Establishment Rules and Regs. This just says that you have to have one of your supervisory personnel have this certification, which is new and in addition to ServSafe and some of the other certifications you've had in the past. You need to have one person in your nutrition program have this by July 1st. If you want all of your cooks, if you have multiple sites, you could have however many people in your program have this, but you need to have at least one. I wanted to go, this is not new, but it's something that I often have to look up in the policy and procedure manual just to make sure that I have it right, because there's a lot of, oh, this is due once a year, this is due twice a year, this is due once a year for this group of people, but twice a year for this group of people. This is one of the things that I always have to look up. So this is for me as well. Molly, who I actually think is on the call, you should all know that she is our new RD. But I wanted to remind you, Molly, since she hasn't come out to your sites yet, she's going to do that in the last 6 months of the state fiscal year. This is her email. She's our RD. She's the one approving your menus. She's the one that you were probably emailing on a regular basis. Just putting it out there. So there's 2 different types of nutrition education. There's the presentations, which are required once a state fiscal year, and it is required by an RD, and we are having Molly do those presentations, just like Mel did in the past. So probably sometime when weather is less sketchy, in the spring, sometime before July 1st, Molly will be coming out to all of your congregate sites and doing her nutrition education presentation. Nutrition education is what you are giving to your congregate and home-delivered meal clients once a month. I think that pretty much everybody is putting it into their, everyone's putting it into their newsletters, and that's totally fine. Just remember, it has to either be written by an RD or approved by an RD. So, because just in order to make it easier for you to find some of those articles to put into your newsletters each week. A couple years ago, I started having our RD approve nutrition education articles that you don't have to, but you could use. And we will have a new batch that Molly has approved for you in the next few months. But you can always go to this Google Drive, and you will find all of
Molly says she'll have all the 2019 newsletters approved by the end of the week.
Oh, perfect. So, I mean, and there's enough in there for 2018 that I think you go for another couple months. But Molly was doing a whole new batch for 2019. I'll just open this up for you to see. So she's going through reviewing each one, and then whether it was written by an RD or not, we're going to have her stamp of approval, which will meet the requirements. So I looked for stuff that was really just a page or 2 pages because I know that your newsletter space is limited, so I'm not trying to get like an 8-page nutrition article, and also things that are more geared towards older adults, or at least interesting. There's some pretty uninteresting nutrition articles out there, I've noticed. The other thing, and I've got a slide about food safety, but there are food safety requirements for your paid staff, volunteers, and your clients. So I also asked Molly to take a look at some of these food safety articles that you can use for your food safety requirements. So as soon as she gives the go-ahead on that, you'll be able to tap into these 2019 and the food safety articles. I imagine that there's going to be some changes in the future for nutrition education. I have no idea what they're going to be. I haven't heard any kind of rumblings about it. I just know that Leanna, our state registered dietitian, has asked for a nutrition education committee in our APAC, which is our Aging Policy Advisory Committee. APAC is where all proposed changes have to go through and be voted on and approved before they're updated in our policy and procedure manual. So there's something going to happen in 2019 having to do with nutrition education. I have no idea what that's going to look like, though, but just so you know. Okay, so food safety training was the other thing that it looks kind of different for whichever group of people that you are giving food safety training to. So paid food staff, food prep staff, they have to have food safety training twice a year, once in between July and December and once in between January and June. Volunteers who are either helping you out in your kitchen or doing the home-delivered meal routes, they have to have it once a year, and then you have to give food safety training to your congregate and home-delivered meal clients. For your congregate and home-delivered meal clients, that can go in your newsletter, that can be your nutrition education, because it also has to do with nutrition education, but you need to do some kind of specific food safety education for your clients once a year. You need to do it for your volunteers once a year, and your paid staff working in the kitchen need it twice a year. Probably the easiest way to do it, because you do need to document it, because you can say you did it, but if Laura, the state evaluator, asks about it, you need to be able to prove that you did it. If you decide to use some of the approved food safety education articles that are going to be on the Google Drive, then just have your volunteer sign it and say, you know, I had this food safety training on December 18th, 2018, keep a record of it. So really the easiest way to do it. Any questions on food safety training? So this is not new, but the way we're doing it is new. In the past, Melanie was coming out to your meal sites and doing the sanitation and safety checklist, just because Molly is new and Molly has had a ton of work to do cleaning up our food processor. We said, and an RD doesn't have to do the food and safety checklist. We said, hey, Molly, spend your time and contract amount cleaning us up in the way that we need to be as a nutrition program, and we're going to put the sanitation and safety checklist on each nutrition site. I think all of y'all have done it for this first 6 months. You have to do it twice a year, just like the food safety training. You'll have to do it once July through December and once January through June. So we can talk about in the future if that is something that we want to ask Molly to do, if she has the capacity to do it. I know I had gotten some feedback that it was nice to have Mel come out twice a year. I mean, she would do her presentations when she did the sanitation and safety checklists. So y'all were getting 2 presentations a year, and I know a lot of y'all have your nutrition counseling clients at that same time. So that's something that I can talk to Molly about in the future if that's a need, if you feel like that's something that you really need at your nutrition sites twice a year, and we can see if she has the capacity and we have the funding for it. But this is the big change, is that now y'all are doing the sanitation and safety checklists, and you need to do it twice a year, and Mel had been doing it in the past. Guest fees are not really new. I think that everybody has been doing a good job with it after our first kind of tumultuous year when nobody really knew how to track it or what the state expected out of us. You do have to require a guest fee for those under 60. One of the changes in the past couple of years is that you had to do that onerous Excel spreadsheet to figure out what your guest fee is. Now the state tells us what the guest fee is in our region. So it's required, it's not voluntary, it's not confidential. You have to get that guest fee before you serve the person the meal. And in our region, the guest fee stipulated by the SUA is $10.85, which everybody rounded up to $11, which is totally fine. You can round it up to the nearest quarter. You can charge more than that. You can charge $15 a meal, but you cannot charge less than that unless you subsidize it. And then everybody here knows what you have to do to track it and all that kind of stuff. So if you want more training on that, let me know. But I feel like everybody's been doing a good job. And I actually only have one nutrition provider who's still subsidizing. Everybody else is doing the $11, so they don't have to worry about tracking the guest fee subsidy. I think that I sent this out when the state sent out what the guest fee is, but I thought this would be a good time to just kind of show y'all where we fall within the guest fee in the rest of the region. Other than 2A, which is Larimer County, so the Fort Collins area, we have one of the highest guest fees in the region. Region 14, which is Alamosa area, they have the lowest guest fee at $4.75. So I just thought that would be interesting for you to see where we fall within the state on what the required guest fee is. Nothing's really changed with INSIP and program income. Just wanted to remind you about tracking, because the INSIP program income and guest fees were kind of that reoccurring issue that we had with the provider on sites with the state. The one change that we've made internally, just to try and simplify INSIP, is that beginning with this latest disbursement, which is disbursement 1 for the federal fiscal year, we're not dividing INSIP into congregate and home delivered anymore. We're just saying, here's your INSIP check. You can use it in congregate, or you could use it in home delivered, or you can break it up into whatever way you want and divide it in that way. But we are sending you one INSIP check. Use it how you will. You still have to track it separately from your regular funds and program income and how you spend it. Everybody knows you track it separately, and it can only be used for domestic food. None of that's changed. No changes in program income, still tracking it separately, and you're still deducting it from your total reimbursement request. Just a reminder that even if you have guests who are just in town for the week, or they come in seasonally, they're snowbirds, whatever, we still need assessment forms for people who are over 60 but who you don't think are going to be around often. Maybe they just come once a year, twice a year. We still need assessment forms for them because we can't prove otherwise that they meet the eligibility of 60 plus. And then the last thing to do a reminder of, because I actually haven't been completely clear on this myself, nutrition providers are required to do 6 hours of training annually. So Leanna, the state RD, has an in-person nutrition training in the early fall. I think it's like in September every year, which will get you that 6-hour requirement. I had a question for her with this one because we had a provider who wasn't potentially not going to be able to attend in person. So I get it that especially if you live really far from Denver, it could be difficult to get down there for that in-person training. I have also requested that there be some kind of call-in option for it because, again, it's kind of hard to get to Denver sometimes. That was denied to me this year because they said the way the room is set up, it's really hard to do a call-in option. So I'm going to suggest earlier next time that they hold it in a different place so you have a call-in option. But regardless, if you aren't able to meet that 6-hour annual training, Leanna does send out approved webinars that you can take that you can just add all together to meet those 6 hours. Just keep documentation of that. My assumption is that Leanna will have that documentation, but it is always good to keep your own documentation. So in case they say, hey, you didn't do your 6 hours of training, you can prove, nope, I did this webinar and this webinar and this webinar. So I think, oh, nope, this is my last one, last slide. So stay with me. And we may try and open up the lines for this one because I need your feedback on this. So every year, we can, you think that's internally?
I don't know.
I'd really like to be able to open up the lines because I need to have a discussion with y'all about this. If you can do me a favor, we're having to mute everybody. If you can mute yourself individually because we're having some really nasty feedback from something, and this way we can unmute everybody, but unless you're talking, you can stay muted because I don't know where this sound is coming from. Anyway, every February for the past 3 years, we have been required to do performance measures on at least 50% of all registered consumers for all registered services. We've been doing this internally, so we don't have to bother y'all with it. It's one less thing that you have to do, because I know you have to do a lot of things for me, which I really appreciate. So we've been pulling the reports in SAMS and now PurePlace, randomizing who gets these surveys, and then sending the survey. Okay, all right. We have to meet a benchmark, and we met all of our benchmarks for all of the services last year, except for this one. This is a home-delivered meal performance measure. And the question that we did not meet the benchmark is, if you needed assistance from Pitkin County, Golden Eagle site, or Aspen Senior Services, or the Kremling Meal site, did you get that information, or did they refer you to find out about those services? The question's super wonky, and I believe that what people are answering no instead of does not apply is they're saying, I didn't need assistance or referral for anything, so they're saying no, which I don't really think is the case, but it's what's happening, and we're, again, having to do this in February. I've been racking my brain on how we can meet the benchmark for this question. So the thought that I had was, we've just mailed these out in the past and then included a stamped return envelope, and then the people would mail them back to us. My thought is, if we had our home-delivered meal drivers deliver this survey at the time of meal delivery with a cover sheet on it that says, hey, here's what this survey is. Remember, if you ever need assistance or referral for financial, social, or health services, did you know that you can ask, and then have the contact information for the name of your nutrition program site. My thought is that this might be more effective because it is, A, hand-delivered with the meal, as opposed to, I got this in the mail, I don't know who this is from, I don't know what this means, I totally forgot that I'm actually getting these home-delivered meals from the Minturn site. So it's coming with a trusted source of the home-delivered meal client. And then, quite honestly, we can kind of prompt them on this question by saying, oh, hey, just so you know, if you ever need assistance or referral, here's the contact information for the nutrition program site. So my question to you is, I'm obviously going to need your help and your approval for your home-delivered meal drivers to give this when they deliver the meal. So it is one additional thing we are asking your home-delivered meal drivers to do. Is that okay? Do you see any problems with this? Do you have any alternative thoughts about how we could do this? We can still do all of the paperwork side on our end. We can pull the reports from PurePlace. We can do the randomized 50%. We can print the letters. You know exactly this is going to Joan Smith. Here's the letter and the self-addressed stamped envelope. Mail that to you, and then all you'll have to do is separate that to the home-delivered meal clients and have it delivered at the time of meal delivery. That's my question, thoughts, suggestions. I'll need you to work with me on this. So I need you to tell me that, yes, you can do this, or no, we can't do this, here's the reason why, or I think we should do it this way.
Carly says, yes, we can do this, and all like the idea.
Okay.
Oh, I added the all.
No, it's okay. You can speak for everybody, Carly.
Another idea. All right, I'm going to try super hard, Carly, and see if we can do this Are you there?
Hello.
Oh, hey, Carly.
Oh, hey. Okay. I was typing it, but I was going to say another thing we could do, I think that would be good for all of us, is like just when we're doing those 6-month check-ins with those HDM people, just to make sure we're using that language in those visits, just to remind them that.
Great idea.
And then I think with the letter, or with the survey, we could also create like a nice flyer that's flashy enough that catches their attention, that just says, kind of like what you guys were saying, if you're ever in need of financial or social or health information, please call this provider, and just kind of put it out there to them more. I think that would help.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Okay, barring anybody typing in all caps saying stop what you're doing immediately, I think we're going to go ahead and move forward this idea. Obviously, if you want to say something else about it, give me a call later.
Abby says, I like it, Carly. That way it's not specifically targeting them and their need.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm going to move forward with this, and these have to go out in the month of February, so we're going to start working on it next month. Before I mail them to you, the letters and the surveys, I will touch base with everybody and just make sure we're still on the same page. Hey, I'm going to mail you 10, 15, 20, whatever 15% of your home delivered meal client base is. I'm going to mail you these letters. Please make sure that sometime in the month of February, that if you are still delivering meals to this person, that you get them this survey. And we're going to try it this way and see if we can meet the benchmark. I believe after this year, they wanted to do it for 3 years without doing any changes in the questions, because that could affect the validity of the data if they changed a question halfway through, because you're trying to see any trends, see if we're getting better and meeting benchmarks. So I think after this February, it opens back up that we can change the way these questions are asked, and maybe we can ask the state to ask them in a way that they're actually answering the question that they're really trying to ask. So, okay, then look for something from me probably end of January, beginning of February, specifically about these performance measures. And we'll continue to do it the rest of the, all the other services, registered services, we're just going to do in-house, and y'all won't have to worry about anything else. But this was the one performance measure that we had to basically do an action plan on how we were going to meet the benchmark for 2019. So unless you have any other questions, concerns, anything else to talk about as a provider or specifically as a nutrition provider, I would say we're done. Thank you very much for your time. Happy holidays. Thank you for all your patience doing provider on-sites this month and all the other things that we request of you to do on a regular basis. We really appreciate you, and we'll talk to y'all in 2019. Thanks.